All right, guys, I totally meant to like slowly fade out the music, but I somehow accidentally managed to hit pause instead. So, good morning, everybody. Hope you can hear me okay. If you could just confirm that my microphone volume and all that stuff is understandable and all that, that would be great in the chat. As you can see, I've got all sorts of interesting sort of musical selections and things that I like putting up. I really do enjoy um, remixes and people playing around with music. I'm not a very musical person, and so I always find it amazing that people can take music from one source and then make slight changes and tweak it, and next thing you know, it's something totally different, and it's just very enjoyable. So lo-fi hip hop stuff and chill kind of music is always good in the background if you're somebody like me who always feels like you need a certain level of stimulation in your brain or else you can't quite keep making steps forward. I find that having things like a baseball game in the background always means that I can be super productive on stuff for some reason. So, I'm not a big believer necessarily that dead silence is what works best for everybody. And so, find your right pathway in terms of what works for you in terms of study habits and things like that. Now, sitting there and playing, you know, Clash of Clans or whatever on your phone while you're trying to do work, that's not necessarily efficient, right? Multitasking um, like that is not necessarily a contributor towards good study habits. However, when it comes to um, actual productivity, having music or whatever it is that works for you, I say go for it as long as you're not being disruptive to anybody else. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna try not to keep you too long this morning because it's been a long week. Congratulations, you've managed to make it to the end of the week. We are now in the home stretch of finishing this off. There's really only one thing added to the classroom that I would like to have finished before you check out for your weekend. If it ends up coming in later in the actual week, that's okay, like in terms of the weekend. But I'd really like for it to be all cleaned up before you switch over to your other class next week, because that class deserves your full attention. So we're going to go through the classroom today. We're just going to sort of double check and make sure that everybody understands exactly what work there is out there to do, as well as go over a little bit of material around themes and character development in Little Brother to give you some more language to refer to when you're doing your summaries. There are no summaries assigned today. I bumped chapter 7 and 8 until our next week together. But once we get into 7 and 8, the summary expectations in terms of will be an actual marked task rather than just a completion mark for feedback. And so I'm hoping that we will be able to continue to raise the level of the types of things that you're focusing on and commenting on in those summaries. Okay. I'm also going to change it so that you don't actually have to do a summary for every single chapter anymore. It's going to be sort of spaced out a little bit more. Okay. So I know that it's been a little bit intense right now, so we'll slow it down a little bit. Okay. All right. So hopping over to the classroom. If we scroll down, okay, again, taking a look at media analysis, Dear Basketball's there. We're all good on that. We've got 22 graded. Hair Love is there. We still have one person who has not done the Hair Love assignment, so please go and take a look to make sure it's not you. I Am Poetry, we are good at 22 graded assignments, so that is all good. Okay, so here are up to chapter 4 in the novel study materials, okay? We're at good with chapter questions 1 and 2. Chapter summaries, we still have 3 people that have not submitted for chapters 1 and 2. Please do so. Chapter 3, chapter questions. This is the chart where you're looking for dialogue of characters and looking for sort of deeper meanings, sarcasm, things like that. If you're really struggling to find some and you find some in chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, just use them at this point. What I'd really like for you to do is to take a look at, you know, how you're using your inference skills to determine that a character means something other than what exactly the words are on the page, right? It's not just the literal words, it's the meaning and the context behind them that means something, okay? So find me 5 examples, make sure you do the conclusion part, okay? And then for these chapters 3 and 4 summaries, we have 4 that are missing. So please go and double check to see if you're one of those people, okay? Advanced sentence correction was from the first day. I know that one's good. Yesterday's work, we have the chapter 4 question. This is the one, as you can see, I still have some to mark. This is the one where you were to take a look at the Bill of Rights and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and identify what rights that Marcus may have had violated by his experience after the traumatic event in San Francisco, where he was involved in the involved with the Department of Homeland Security. And you're supposed to look at it from his context as an American, and then look at it if he were a Canadian, if this had happened in Vancouver, Toronto, or Ottawa, or something like that, and something similar had happened. The laws are slightly different, and some of the work that's coming in has been fantastic on this, right? Where people have identified a few of the rights through which the experience that Mark has had may have broken the law. Okay? Then we also have watching these videos from Cory Doctorow, the author of Little Brother, and his discussions around internet privacy and so on, and then some questions to answer. Okay, sometimes I'm sending you feedback asking you to add a bit more. Please do so if I ask you to. But most importantly is just to get a good handle on who Cory Doctorow is, because when you are reading a book, the author, even if the author isn't a character in it, the author is somebody who is playing a major role in that story. That story is coming from that author's brain, involves all that author's biases, involves all that author's personal experiences. And it's very clear, at least to me, I think, that Cory is Marcus in many ways. He sees himself, or at least, upon reflection in his childhood, like he's very much sort of put a younger version of himself in this book. And so spend some time with Cory Doctorow, get a sense of his voice, get a sense of what his perspectives are, and answer the questions, okay? Then we've also got the summaries from 5 and 6 yesterday. Okay, remember the guidelines. Remember that you're not just reiterating the plot points, and you're not just reiterating the character feelings and emotions. It's a balance between the two. So, are you identifying that you're seeing an experience of a heightened sense of anxiety, worry, fear? What event is that coming out in? What traumatic event happened in this section to cause these problems? Is this a boring section of the book because it only deals with, internal dialogues and so on? So, think more than just the sort of 5 W's, the who, the what's, the when's, the where's, and the why's of Marcus's experience, but think about what has happened in this section, how has the story changed, and so on, okay? So this is a completion mark still, because we are still looking for feedback in order to get these as perfect as possible before they start really counting for a lot, okay? All right, so you have your grammar sheets that you've been working on all week, okay? You have the Border short story. Some people have been sending me notes saying, like, who's the main character? Is the main character the person whose eyes we're seeing it from? Is the main character somebody else? There is some ability to interpret the story based on your own point of view, as long as you can back it up, okay? So spend some time with it, read the story, answer the questions. Again, remember, round character versus flat character, meaning rounded meaning more details, flat meaning less details. Okay, if you have any questions about this work, I'm around. Reach out. We can go over the sheet. I can rephrase some questions for you. Okay, just send me an Edsby message, and I'm there to help you out. Okay, so one question for 5 and 6. Some people have said, "Where's chapter 6?" I'm not assigning you a chapter 6 question unless you really want me to. But I'm guessing most of you don't want me to, okay? So, chapter 5 question only, explaining a piece of technology to somebody who doesn't know much about technology, okay? And then these two are the ones that came live today. So we'll go over the theme analysis practice first. Okay. Okay, so what you have here is some very short blocks of text. And what we're doing is we're talking about themes. Okay? You will often hear that this book has a theme of something, or this book is thematically related to something. Okay? A theme is a literary device, meaning that it is something that you, the author, would like you to think about, a lesson to take from the story, a message to take from the story, etc. It obviously is more complicated than that when you get further on in your English career. However, at a grade 9 level, thinking of a theme as a message or a lesson to be learned in the story that the author has intentionally put in the story for you to consider. So, for example, the theme of privacy and your right to privacy being infringed is obviously all over Little Brother, right? So, when it comes to thinking about other stories, right? You could think of a story like Harry Potter, or a story like Star Wars, or a story like The Hunger Games, right? What themes would you have in those stories? Well, in Harry Potter, you could have the theme of, how friendship is important, and stepping up when no one else can is important. And the theme of Star Wars, believe in yourself, or don't get caught up in prophecies because sometimes they don't work out the way you think, um, would be a theme. Or in the case of, Hunger Games, you would have a lot of the same themes as you might have in Little Brother, right? So you could say, a theme that exists in both Little Brother and Hunger Games would be what happens when governments become too powerful, right? So we need to do some work in thinking about what themes are and how to identify them. Okay, so you have these blocks of text. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you will read the block of text, and then you will say, what is the theme of this story, right? What is the lesson or message from this story? And then one sentence to explain what happens in the story to lead you to believe this. This is a formative step, meaning it is a completion mark for purposes of feedback, in order to help you understand how to start thinking about writing essays like this, right? Because I am going to ask you to write an essay about Little Brother to say, prove a theme exists in Little Brother. And so you will say the theme is this, and here's a bunch of evidence. So asking you questions, what's the theme and what happens in the story to lead you to believe this, is starting to prompt you to think about how you can see evidence in texts. Okay? So this is due today by the end of the day. And when by I say today, I mean get it in as soon as it's done. Okay? The other thing uploaded today is your quote analysis and your theme study, okay? And it says we will also go over the anti-hero description of our main character, Marcus, okay? So the Little Brother quote analysis is something that we are going to work on next week. I am posting it today in case somebody out there is keen to keep working forward in the story, as well as the fact that we're starting to hit these page numbers. So I wanted to make sure that you could do the work if you so chose, okay? So the quote analysis is that there's actual sections of the book that are pulled out of the story, and they are cited using MLA citations, which are something that you're going to have to work on when you're writing your own essays, okay? So you have a number of different quotes all the way through the book, all the way to the end of the book. And it's a section. So, for example, this one on page 64, it says, "We are going to send you home today, but you are a marked man. You have not been found to be above suspicion. We're only releasing you because we're done questioning you for now. But from now on, you belong to us. We will be watching you." So the context would be, where in the story is this happening? Who is saying it? What does it mean? Significance would be a short description of what this quote changes about Marcus's character. What does it make you consider in terms of the themes that are existed in the book? And generally, how is this an important part of the story? So obviously, this is something that, the haired lady had said. And so overall, um, we want you to start thinking about how these quotations bring out the important aspects of the story. Okay? So, this is not something that you need to start today. However, if you pass one of these quotations, right? So this one's on page 64, this one's on page 87. Fill out this chart as you go. Okay? Second one is I am giving you a guide around the major themes in Little Brother to help you start thinking about how you're going to, prove that one of these themes exists in the entire book. Okay? So it says using your novel, record instances of these major themes. Obviously, if you find other instances, you can add them to your summaries. You can add them into your, quote analysis. You can add them to this chart too, if you wish. Okay. So provide examples and quotes from the book to help you understand these major themes. Okay. So these are the themes that we're going to be looking at. Marcus as the hero, self-discovery, coming of age. Right? We'll go over what an anti-hero is in a second. He resists authority at home, at school, online, and in government. He finds purpose for resistance once he is detained by the DHS, right? And so on. I'm not reading the whole thing because there may be some spoilers, right? So Big Brother is always watching. Okay. Personal freedom versus surveillance. Appearances versus reality. Things are not always as they seem. And tradition and change. How is society viewing the change? So for example, the people in San Francisco are going from highly free to a lot of government control. So think about that. Okay. So this sheet also we will go over together in more detail next week, but I wanted to give you these words so that you'd have the ability to think about what they all mean. Okay. All right. So before I jump into this last piece, which is heroes and anti-heroes, just looking at the chat, has anybody got any questions? Hopefully I'm coming through okay, because nobody responded and said, yeah, you sound awful or anything like that. So I'm just assuming that all is good. Okay, so heroes and anti-heroes. Okay, so this is a means to give you some words around how Marcus is designed as a character. So I've already put out the idea that I feel that Marcus as a character is kind of like an avatar or a role play for Cory Doctorow, thinking about his own childhood and the things that he wished he did. Okay. So when one is studying books, especially in an academic or university pathway course, we actually dive in and look at books in terms of its sort of building blocks. And one of the building blocks in a story is character and character development, right? So many people have watched TV shows or watched movies and gone, oh, that character is not realistic, or oh my goodness, that character is just too over the top, too much of a stereotype, and so on. You're doing, in saying those things, you're actually doing some of the same work that we do here, but we just need to sort of streamline it into an effective analysis. And so one of the ways to do that is to think about types of characters or archetypes of characters. And so we have the hero or the protagonist, right? So thinking about what characteristics make up a hero, how can we, the reader, identify a hero, and what makes a hero special? So when thinking about, heroes from other things, like talking about Hunger Games, right? So what makes Katniss Everdeen a hero that is understandable and recognizable? What makes her special? What makes Harry Potter special? What makes Luke Skywalker special? And so on, right? Like, what are the characteristics about them, right? So, we also have the tragic hero, right? So, that would be a hero who might sacrifice themselves for the greater good, or despite pushing hard for something, they have a tendency to self destruct, or they have a tendency to have problems, right? So, tragic heroes would be um, heroes that tend not to make it out of the battle. So a lot of Lord of the Rings characters don't make it out of the battle, and they're more of a tragic hero, right? A lot of Shakespearean characters, like Romeo and Juliet, and others, are tragic heroes that don't make it out of the story, right? But then in modern times, like as in modern, we have anti-heroes, and anti-heroes don't fall into the same typical characters of the past, where you had clear good guys and clear bad guys, and instead you've got these people that are much sort of a mixture of the two together, and we've been calling them anti-heroes. So a characteristic of an anti-hero is somebody who isn't perfect, has lots of human frailties and flaws, is seen as gritty, rough, abrupt, rude, sarcastic, etc., often disillusioned with society, often seeks redemption or revenge, often for their own satisfaction, sometimes for the greater good, but sometimes not, doesn't always think about the right things to do, is driven by emotions, misunderstood by others in society, and possesses qualities normally belonging to villains, and could be classified as a vigilante, someone who takes the law into their own hands, right? So you've got somebody like Victor Frankenstein, the guy who made Frankenstein's monster back in the day. It's actually the first ever version of um, science fiction, in my opinion, right? He was written, almost 200 years ago, about a person who manages to bring a dead body back to life, right? Using science. So it's actually the first science fiction story ever written. Um, you've got V, right? Who is a hero who fights back against big governments in a dystopian future. Batman is an anti-hero, right? He breaks the law every time he takes the law into his own hands, right? He's not a police officer. Ah, good old Stone Cold Steve Austin from the pro wrestling world, right? Lots of pro wrestlers are anti-heroes. Okay, and so on. When I think about video games, for example, there's tons of anti-heroes out there. Like anybody in a Grand Theft Auto game is an anti-hero, or sometimes a straight up villain. All the characters from Red Dead Redemption are anti-heroes, especially John Marston and Arthur Morgan are big anti-heroes. Uh, you can think of lots of examples where the hero in the game, or the heroes in a show, like ones like Breaking Bad is an anti-hero, Dexter is an anti-hero, and so on, right? It's very much a modern phenomenon where we've mixed the good and the bad together. So, not asking you to do this work that's up here, okay? But, you know, Marcus is probably an anti-hero, right? Because he is a vigilante. He is pushing back against society. He is organizing and attempting to bring people together, as you will see, to fight for a common good. But he goes about doing it in ways that are not necessarily lawful. So I'm answering this question for you. Does he possess the characteristics of a true anti-hero? Yeah, I think he does. And so when you're thinking about your summaries, and when you're thinking about your quote analyses, and when you're thinking about these themes, also talking about how Marcus is an anti-hero and he's showing anti-hero traits in particular sections of the book is a good exercise. Okay? All right. So before I let you go, let's just reiterate again what came new today. So this one, the theme analysis and quote analysis, is mainly for next week that we're together. I only posted it so that we could start thinking about it. Okay? Theme analysis practice is part of today. chapters 5 and 6 is part of today, borders today, and finishing off your grammar sheets today. Okay? That's your day. Uh, hopefully, everybody will end up in. Oh my goodness, look at this chat, eh? I don't know who John Buck is, but if you guys don't have your actual names in there, then I'm going to have to ask you to leave my chat. CJ Stepping, I'm not sure who you are. I'm guessing you're CJ from the class, though. Could you just confirm that, please? All right, if anybody doesn't have any other questions, then you can use your nice manners and say bye, or send me a note if you have any questions. Apologize for the slight live stream raid that we had from people not properly logged in. See you later. Well, hopefully the reports will mean that people don't come back in the chat. All right. One, two. All right. All right, there's still 7 people viewing. Just want to check last call to see if you have any questions about the work to do today.